talking about duplicity or double-mindedness. Being double-minded comes under a definition of bad faith. We've spoken about this before. People will try to write a good faith notice, but they're writing in duplicity. They're writing with their God-given name of conscience, the origin of that comes from God. So we know that's truth and that's creation, not the recreation legal state name that was made up for the purpose of commerce. Matthew 6:24 says you cannot serve God and money or mammon. So therefore there is definitely an impossibility factor in there. Trying to do it will not work well for the one who does it. But when we look at bad faith, which is what people are operating in when they're operating within the legal, bad faith is defined as double-mindedness or double-heartedness in duplicity, fraud, or deception. It may involve intentional deceit of others or self-deception. Now, once you've realized how this is operating, your conscience is going to start bothering you. It's the normal distraught feeling that will happen once you come to this knowledge, because now you're trying to find the escape. And according to the book of Corinthians, when Paul was writing, he said that when the temptation is, we're talking about evil temptation, to being tempted into evil, not by God, but by evil and his evil ones that are out there. So welcome to the legal society of the lawyers who are tempting you to walk into the legal trappings of their system with a tag name that they're able to torture you with because you've suretied a lie. So when we're looking at remedy, Paul said that God would provide the escape. So it was interesting that the word escape in etymology meant to leave one's garment behind. So it was like a cover-up of who they were. So we're dealing with the naked truth here on how you came in with nothing. You weren't born with a legal surname, and that's why the Noah Webster's 1828 actually defined unarmed as a man is born unarmed. So it's talking about legal title. It's also talking about what goes with legal title. And of course, it turns a man into an unconscionable, violent individual who therefore will do things that are unconscionable because he's walked into evil. So that's why the arms and the surnames and the coat of arms all lead together, along with legal title, agnominations, cognomens. All these titles are things that were warned about in the book of Job, at Job 32, 21, 22, which said that we were not to accept a man's person. That means a man's title or flattering titles. When looking at the wording in the scripture, when it talked about flattering titles, it went to the Hebrew word kana, which is K-A-N-A, which meant especially a surname. So it was dealing with legal epithets. It was dealing with false titles, things that were meant to flatter individuals. And so people have taken on these titles, not realizing the consequences for bearing a fictitious title that is placed upon them for the purposes, of course, of running the commerce and legal indebtedness. So hopefully we've understood that part of it, but it's not uncanny that we would actually find the framing of a system like that on a statement of birth record, leading to the fact that there is the inducement even to place this on a child, innocent without cause, who doesn't even have any say in the system yet, but then the framework's already being put into place, but then inducing it, and then at the same time prohibiting its use by marking it as an error, and therefore having someone walk into error and then live in error, as the book of Peter spoke of all those who have been deceived are walking in error, and of course being made into merchandise by evil people with feigned words, which feigned is fiction. It means fashion. We know that the scripture also said, do not be conformed. We're fashioned after this world. That means fictionalized, being part of something that's not truthful, that would identify you in the world of the imaginations of men and not the truth of God. So we further go into basically the definitions in the book of words here, the American Dictionary of English Language, Noah Webster's 1828. And it goes into duplicity. We're going to read into scripture in a second because we're going to go to James, which is going to further confirm what we've been talking about thus far. But when we look at duplicity, which is the word that's the closest, you won't find double-mindedness, but you will find duplicity. So duplicity is defined as duplex, double, doubleness of heart and speech, the act or practice of exhibiting a different or contrary conduct, or uttering different or contrary sentiments at different times in relation to the same thing, or the act of dissembling one's real opinions for the purpose of concealing them and misleading persons in the conversation and intercourse of life. Double dealing, dissimulation, deceit. In law, duplicity is the pleading of two or more distinct matters or a single plea. So, but when we're really looking at it, when you enter into the court, you're automatically in duplicity because you're walking in there as the creation of God, but you're bearing the burden of legal title, which God has warned you against. And therefore, you could never be made to carry that. But you cannot be trying to claim that your legal rights have been violated, because that's ridiculous. You obtained that title through the concept of deception, of what we call conditional legal rights. Those are granted, can be removed, messed with through the legal authorities who grant them. Therefore, you really never have any standing in that world. You're just claiming standing, and therefore you take on the burden for that. You have no proof it's yours, but you keep claiming it. And that's why you can never obtain it, because you have no proof it's yours. So it's just mere claim, and mere claim is not title. So we go further to the book of James, and great book, because it gives you the knowledge of God. So we're going to go into James chapter, we'll go to the first one, James 1, verse 8. And we should be familiar with the book of James after all the videos, because we definitely connected it on James chapter 4 and James chapter 5, which are very key. But James 1 verse 8, it clearly states, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. So automatically, if you're playing spiritual and then you're absolutely trying to obtain gain, okay, private gain, personal gain out of the public, then you're definitely confused, and we can understand where that comes from because we've been so imprinted in a world that is temporal about money, and we're not thinking about spiritual when we're operating in the commercial world or business. But of course, many spiritual leaders of Christianity have made a real enterprise of massive lifestyles based on taking that gain and actually not even using it properly. What they received from the public treasury or funds from people, they were using it actually for just their private, personal selfishness, living lavish lives off of their parishioners. We go further to James chapter 4, verse 8. So these be two scriptures very easy to remember. James 1, verse 8, now James 4, verse 8. And it says, draw nigh to God or near to God, and he will draw nigh to you or near to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Now, when we read previous to this, we already read in James 4, in other videos, James 4 and 4, it says, ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is an enemy of God. So did you bring your spiritual, God-given gift name, your unalienable name, into the world of men and made it alienable? That's really bringing a third party into a covenant. And so of course, it's interesting that we use the word adult in our society, which relates to the word public. So when you enter the public, generally at 18 or in some places 21, you have now taken on your claim to public title, and therefore that reason are going to pay for the use of that title, even though you are not an incumbent or someone who really has that office or that public title. You're just merely claiming it and trespassing on it in ignorance, and unfortunately, it comes with consequences. So, friendship with the world is definitely enmity with God, and that's what we really have to look at. So you cannot be with God and be a friend of the world or the temporal world and participate in that activity.